Today we're looking at the second part of the fifth lecture in the winter 1931 term. In the last lecture, we saw the consequences of the use of the transcendental person in the Christian deity on the psychological condition of the believer. Namely, we saw that the deity is used as an escape from confrontation with nature, or the real, that tends to create a dissociation and splitting, leading to materialism. In this lecture, Jung then turns to the inverse interpretation of the image of gold, not in its projective aspect, which is materialism, but its introjective aspect, where the gold now symbolizes an inner treasure in the natural or earthly body. From this point, the vision continues, and the visioner finds herself in a forest. She says, "A swirl of flaming red surrounded the forest. My robe changed to green, and my feet sank into the soft earth. I lifted up my hands, and leaves grew from them. Then I knew I had become a tree and lifted my face to the sun." The commentary by the seminar attendees is then instructive. They suggest that she is now rooted to the earth, and as a tree, she is linked with both the earth and the sun. The tree, Jung says, is now in contrast with the blood, and is the discovery of a new life principle. This principle is not an animal substance, the blood, though she finds it within the animal body. It is, he says, the first discovery of the inner treasure that is the principle of vegetative growth, the growth of plant life. The spiral in the previous vision was a transitional symbol of the natural unfolding of vegetative unconscious from the animal body represented by the blood. In this vision, we see this form of spiritual life taking root. Jung comments that it is spiritual development according to the life of a plant, and not just the animal, that is required of the human being. The human being cannot, he says, continue to develop spiritually as long as they're in the blood of the human animal. The human animal is in the heat of the body, subject to the forces and winds of a violent spirit. In the initial movement of spirituality, the blood and the spirit of the animal are divided. This is the experience of the spiritual or ghostly presence I have considered under the category of ecstasis. But now, through spiritual development from this profound encounter, the human being must develop according to the gentle life of a plant. Unlike the animal, whose spirit is excited, irritable, and nervous, and whose lifespan is one that rises to its prime in midlife and descends towards death, the plant is slow and organic, and, Jung says, up to its last year, blossoms and brings forth fruit as it has done since the beginning. We might therefore distinguish two categories of spiritual experience. In the first, the divided animal longs for union with God, and in the experience of ecstasis is given some proof of the possibility of such a union. This is a chaotic and violent event characteristic of the animal spirit. But in the second, the unconscious unfolds as does the life of a plant. This plant stands at the center of, but apart from, the human passions, as the image in the vision indicates. There, the tree stands in a flaming circle of what Jung calls cupidity and desirousness, standing as a tree that is not subject to animal capriciousness. So while the first experience is the revelation of the Holy Spirit, the sacred duality of man and God, the second is much like that which we have discussed under the category of Tao, that is, the union. Jung comments on the second stage and the imagery in this lecture's vision, so I will quote them here at length. He says, "If you leap into the flames, you are entangled in the world of desirousness, the illusion of good and evil. But inside you are a cloister, a garden. This inner garden is where spirituality can flower." To end as good psychologists of religion, we might consider the psychological state of contemporary Christianity. There, we are faced with a landscape that cannot seem to hold these two different spiritual paths in the same mind. Where the spirit of the animal consciousness abounds, for example, the charismatic Christianities, there tends to be a reciprocal neglect of the vegetative spirit. But where the vegetative spirit governs, the older traditional Christianities, there is a reluctance to engage with the human spirit. So, we might say, to bring consciousness to this tension in the spiritual life, between animal and plant, first and second, is an important contribution of Jung's work.